Hello and welcome to Love from the Other Side. If you are on this video, perhaps you too are in need of hope. We bring you stories from around the world of people who have shared their near-death experiences. We believe these stories of love and forgiveness, when shared, have the power to change the world. While you may not agree with everything they share, we do ask that all comments be kept respectful and kind. With that being said, let's get started with today's video. Today we bring you an experience from Kathleen, who had no way of knowing that her father was passing while she was working in the yard. She had what is called a shared death experience with her father. On June 13th, 2020, my father passed away in a nursing center. I had no idea that my father was going to pass that day. I live over 200 miles away. At the time of his passing, I was in my backyard working with my husband building an extension patio. I was wide awake and it was in the middle of the afternoon. I do not use drugs and I had not been drinking. At the time my experience started, I had been shoveling gravel from the driveway into a wheelbarrow and rolling it to the back patio, where my husband would then take over the wheelbarrow to roll it down a ramp into the lower patio. This event happened during a single trip from the front yard to the back. As I describe this experience, it's coming from two perspectives. I believe there was a spirit me that experienced and witnessed the transition of events from my father's passing from this world, and there was the human me. As a human me, I am reflecting on the spiritual experience through a lens of analysis and trying to connect the dots to make sense of what happened. During this event, the human me was pushing a wheelbarrow and has no recollection of how I moved it from point A to point B. The spirit me witnessed something else. As I was rolling the wheelbarrow past the maple tree, I was out of breath, so I stopped to take a quick break. I was standing about 5 feet from our maple tree. I recall looking up into the blue sky, feeling the warmth from the summer day. Something swept through me. A thought was spoken. What a beautiful summer day, while at the same time I was experiencing an emotion of absolute joy. A transition of some sort occurred at this point. I can only describe the feeling as pure joy sweeping through me from my back to my front. It was as if a giant smile was pasted across my face. I vaguely recall seeing some sort of golden apparition smiling back at me. Perhaps a reflection? It was so quick. There was an upward lifting sensation, and I also recall the sensation of my eyes rolling up towards the top of my head. Something changed so seamlessly at this point that I did not even realize it had changed. After this transition, my attention shifted to the maple tree. The tree I was standing 5 feet away from now appeared to be more than 50 feet away. The backyard appeared to be stretched or warped. Even at this moment, it never occurred to me that anything had changed or was abnormal. I didn't even question how I moved so far in an instant. There was a man with his backside facing me, standing under the maple tree. At that time, I assumed it was my husband. I felt a little agitated at him because I left him in the lower patio, and I was wondering what he was doing under the tree. I looked down at his feet. He was wearing jeans, a baseball cap, and a blue t-shirt. He did not appear as an apparition or a ghost. He appeared like a young, full-bodied man. During this part of my experience, I did not realize it was my father. I was about to yell at him, "What are you doing over there?" But for some reason, I did not. At another point during this experience, I recall wanting a closer look at something, and instantly I was both far away and being right up to the backside of his neck, as if I were only inches away. I saw every single hair sticking out between the strap of the baseball cap. I can describe it as being up close while at the same time being in the distance. I honestly don't know whose hair I was looking at. My husband at the time was still in the lower patio on the opposite end of the yard. The man under the tree was obviously not my husband. I moved on to what I can only describe as the next scene. I still perceive myself as working in the backyard. In my mind, I was heading back to the front. I noticed a light coming in on the left side of this man. I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, a light is coming in." But I wasn't really impressed or didn't understand the significance of it. But I was thinking it was a pretty light. Then it was as if I was walking past the tree again, or my attention was redirected back to the light. This time I noticed something different about the light, like you don't see this every day. It was a soft, white, misty light. It shimmered as if it contained sparkles of light. There was a white clarity that is difficult to describe. I also saw colors, hues of light pinks and blues. The light was bathing this man on his left side, and it was absolutely beautiful. I just stood there and said to myself, "Wow, that is beautiful. I wish I had a camera." It may be worth noting that the sun at this time of the day was on the right side of the house, while this incredibly beautiful light was coming in on the left side. What happened next was the most profound part of my experience. I saw or perceived a robed arm stretching out from this light. I say perceived because for most of my experience I can close my eyes and revisit all the vivid details, except with regards to this large arm stretching out of the light. I know I saw an arm at the time of my experience, but when I close my eyes to revisit the memory, I cannot see it, except I remember the intense sparkle that occurred when the arm made contact with the backside of my father's left shoulder. It was as if a seam had opened up in my backyard and the light was pouring out of it. The light was brilliant but soft. I did not see a face. At the same moment when the stretched out arm made contact with the backside of my father's left shoulder, a bright sparkle occurred. At that exact same moment, I heard a voice inside my head saying the words with the most incredible loving intensity, "I love him." It was like an internal voice that was soft and whispering, "I love him." It was not my thought, although it felt like it came through my mind. I understand now that I was being spoken to telepathically. The intense love being expressed through my heart while simultaneously hearing the thought, "I love him," was so intense. I felt what I would describe as being crippled in love and awe. It was both an emotional and physical experience. I felt as if I was tilting my head to my left shoulder in awe, like one would do when witnessing the most innocent and the most beautiful thing you could ever imagine. At the same time, my heart just swelled with love. I believe now that I was truly sharing my father's death experience in these moments. When the light being made contact with his left side, my heart on the left side literally swelled with love. I felt it as a physical sensation. I thought I would never say that. I understand now that my response was because I recognized this expression of love moving through me was not coming from me. I was confused. I spoke the truth. This love was so intense and parental in nature. I never felt that love before. I don't think that it exists here on earth in that form. The closest thing that resembled that kind of love was the love I experienced after giving birth to my children, but the feeling was magnified. Was I supposed to love like that? When those words, "I would never say that," came to mind, I felt ashamed. I realized at that moment my soul or my spirit was bare and open. There were no boundaries and nothing was hidden. There was no fear, just a bit of shame. But the shame was quickly whisked away. At some point, I was no longer looking at my father. Maybe he wasn't there anymore, and my full attention was on the light. I was mesmerized by the beauty, the color, the love, and the awe. I saw what looked like soft dandelion seeds floating and reflecting the light. Although they could have been bugs in my backyard, I remembered them dancing in the light. I also saw something more solid than the light. It was a brilliant gold color, and it had more fluid and a solid density to it. I was trying to figure out what it was. Instantly, as if I moved by thought, I recall being inside what I would describe as the center of a sphere of a soft, white static-like energy, like the television snow but finer. Windows were all around inside this sphere. The edges of these windows were blended in this sphere, like static white. The window in front was playing a high-definition, hyper-real movie. The man walking in this movie was absolutely the backside of my father walking towards an old house. He was still wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap. The man whose backside was facing me in my backyard was the same man I was watching in this movie. This is the first time I would recognize my father, and he was a younger version of himself. He was walking towards a house in the green grass. The house had a whitish yellow wood siding. Although I never saw anyone else in the window but my father, I could hear a child giggling and I could hear people laughing. I connected emotionally with the giggling child. It felt like a memory, but it's not a memory I recollect. It felt like someone was chasing the child, like when you play tag. The windows on the side of the sphere, I recall, were blotted out, black and white blurs. Whatever was playing in those windows, I could not see. The next thing I recall was the sensation of putting or dropping the wheelbarrow down by the lower patio where I left my husband working. My physical vision was black, but being blotted back in quickly. There was a tug or a pull. It felt like a soft sand being poured on the top of my head, and it tickled the back of my eyes. When my physical vision was completely restored in seconds, I saw my husband in the lower patio where I had left him. My first thought was, if my husband is on the patio, who is under the tree? I sat down on the patio and I kept staring at the tree. I said to myself, what just happened? Something happened. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I know I saw something under the tree. I still had this echo of the child giggling and a very strong sense of deja vu. I felt heavy like a weighted burden. Gravity. I was trying to plug reality into it. I thought, did I mistake the barbecue grill for a person? Was I daydreaming? At that moment, I could not recollect the details, just fragments. I sat there puzzled. All I recalled at that moment was that I saw a man under the tree, but no one was there. There was only the essence of a lingering memory of a picnic and the giggling child. Eventually, I just shrugged it off and went back to work. Oddly, I was full of energy and even worked out with my husband. It was late in the evening and we decided to call it a day. And that is when I noticed my phone had been blowing up with messages from my brothers and sisters. I did not get to read them because at the same moment my brother called me and he said, "How are you taking it?" I told him I did not know what he was referring to, but that I'm assuming that our father had passed. We talked for a while. I took a shower and ate a small dinner. Later, I was alone and reflecting on the day. I read through the text messages and then thought about what I was doing when my father passed. Then it all came back to me, everything, every detail. I remember everything I described above. I was so elated I started telling my husband, then other family members. All I kept saying was, I'm not special, but I saw Dad go to heaven. I now have a million new questions about life. I don't know if this experience was just for me. I understand clearly that I am not any more special than anyone else, as we are all loved and all special. What I do know is that when other people shared their experiences, I felt validated, that I wasn't losing my mind or alone. There are many events and dreams in my life that occurred prior to this experience. I refer to them now as guideposts or synchronicities. This experience was significantly different because I was wide awake and it was in the middle of the afternoon. I now pay close attention to everything in my life. I don't believe any of it is by accident or coincidence. Well, that is our experience for today. As always, I will put a link in the About section of this video if you would like to read her experience for yourself. After the experience, she also offers probably a couple dozen questions and answers regarding her experience, so you may enjoy reading those as well. If you enjoyed this video, I would like to invite you to be the newest subscriber to Love from the Other Side. Until next time, God bless.